The thunder crashed like a judgment from the gods, shaking the thin walls of our cramped Brooklyn apartment. And in that split second, I swear my heart stopped because Ethan, my straight-as-an-arrow roommate of 2 years, looked at me with eyes that held something I'd never seen before. Raw, unfiltered need. "Alex, don't go," he said, his voice barely cutting through the howl of the wind, his hand gripping my wrist like it was the only anchor in the storm. I froze, the door half open to the deluge outside, realizing that staying meant crossing a line we'd both pretended didn't exist. Rain hammered the city like it was trying to wash away secrets, but nothing could erase the way Ethan's fingers lingered on my skin, warm and insistent, pulling me back from the edge of escape. We'd shared this shoebox of a place since college graduation. The freelance graphic designer piecing together gigs between ramen noodles and late-night sketches. Him, the earnest history teacher molding young minds at the local high school, always coming home with chalk dust on his sleeves and stories of kids who'd remind him why he believed in second chances. Our friendship was easy, effortless, movie marathons on the sagging couch, splitting grocery runs where I'd tease him for his obsession with organic kale, and those quiet evenings where he'd vent about grading papers while I nursed a beer and nodded, hiding how his laugh made my chest ache. But tonight, with the power flickering and the streets flooding, everything felt charged, like the air before lightning strikes true. I shut the door, the click echoing louder than it should, and turned to face him. Ethan stood there in the hallway's dim glow from the emergency lantern we'd dug out, his broad frame silhouetted against the kitchen light, shirt clinging slightly from the humidity that seeped through the cracks. At 26, he was the picture of unassuming charm, sandy hair tousled from running his hands through it, blue eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, a jawline that spoke of Midwestern roots he rarely mentioned. "Thanks, man," he murmured, rubbing the back of his neck, that boyish gesture that always disarmed me. Storms like this, they bring back stuff. Bad stuff. We migrated to the living room, the lantern casting long shadows that danced like ghosts across the peeling wallpaper. I grabbed blankets from the closet, the ones we bought on a whim during a Black Friday sale, and tossed one his way. He caught it with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes, wrapping it around his shoulders as he sank onto the couch. I joined him, closer than usual, the space between us shrinking under the weight of the thunder's rumble. "Want to talk about it?" I asked, keeping my voice light, though my pulse thrummed in my ears. Ethan wasn't one for vulnerability. He was the guy who fixed the leaky faucet with YouTube tutorials and cracked jokes at his own expense to deflect. He hesitated, staring at the rain-lashed window where droplets raced like tears. "It's the anniversary," he said finally, voice low. "Mom's car accident. 3 years tomorrow. Dad's been calling nonstop. But, I don't know, Alex. Being alone with it tonight, it hits different." His words hung there, fragile as the flickering light, and I felt a pang sharper than any rejection I'd ever faced. Ethan's family was a ghost in our apartment. Photos of a smiling woman with his same blue eyes tucked away in his drawer. Mentions of a father who worked construction back in Ohio. Too gruff for phone calls that lasted more than 5 minutes. I'd pieced together the loss from fragments, how he'd dropped out of grad school plans to move here, chasing stability in lesson plans and lesson learned. I shifted, my knee brushing his under-the-blanket fort we'd improvised. "You're not alone," I said, the words slipping out before I could cage them. "Not tonight. Not ever." if you don't want. It was more than roommate solidarity. It was the truth I'd buried under layers of platonic banter. The ache that bloomed every time he brought home a date. A string of women who never stuck, who complained about his emotional walls over breakfast burritos I'd whip up to ease the awkward mornings after. Ethan turned to me then, his gaze steady, searching, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the space between our breaths. "What would I do without you?" he whispered. And damn if it didn't sound like a confession. The storm raged on, but inside, a different tempest brewed. We really talked for hours, the lantern our only witness. He spilled about the guilt that clawed at him, how he'd been driving that night, arguing with his mom over college majors when the truck swerved into their lane. "I should have seen it coming," he said, voice cracking, fists clenched in his lap. I listened, my hand finding his shoulder, squeezing until the tension ebbed. In return, I shared pieces of my own fractured past, coming out to parents who loved me but didn't understand. The parade of hookups that left me hollow, the fear that I'd never find someone who saw past the labels. Ethan nodded, his thumb absently tracing circles on my knuckles, a touch so casual, yet ignited sparks I'd long ignored. As midnight crept in, exhaustion tugged at us. The couch became our refuge. Blankets tangled like unspoken promises. "Stay here," he murmured, patting the spot beside him. Like old times in the dorms, I laughed softly, remembering those all-nighters cramming for finals. But this felt worlds away, intimate, electric. I lay down, our bodies inches apart, the heat of him seeping through the fabric. Sleep evaded me, my mind replaying the brush of his hand, the way his breath evened out into soft snores. Then, in the quiet, he shifted, arm draping over my waist like it belonged there. My heart hammered. Was it accident, comfort, or something more? Bubbling up in the vulnerability of the night, morning light filtered through the blinds, gray and forgiving, the storm reduced to a drizzle. Ethan stirred first, his arms still around me, face buried in the crook of my neck. Panic flickered in his eyes when he woke fully, but he didn't pull away, not immediately. "Hey," he said, voice rough with sleep, a sheepish smile tugging at his lips. "Guess we got cozy. I played it cool." Heart racing beneath the calm. Storm Survival 101. No big deal, but it was. Breakfast was pancakes from a mix we'd stocked for emergencies. Syrup sticky on the counter as we ate in companionable silence, stealing glances that lingered too long. The day unfolded lazily, the city steaming under clearing skies. Ethan had no classes, teacher in-service day, and I had no deadlines pressing. We ventured out for coffee at the corner cafe, hoodies zipped against the chill, shoulders bumping as we walked. "Thanks for last night," he said over steaming mugs, his foot nudging mine under the table. "Really? You're my rock, Alex." The words warmed me more than the latte. But doubt not, was this pity, gratitude, or the dawn of realization? Back home, unpacking takeout for lunch. The air thickened again. Ethan paused mid-bite, fork hovering. "That girl from Tinder, Sarah, canceled on me last week." He shrugged, but his eyes held mine. Honestly, I wasn't bummed. Haven't been in a while. My fork clattered. "What are you saying?" He leaned forward, elbows on the table, vulnerability etching lines around his mouth. "I'm saying I've been thinking about us, about why it always feels off with them. Thunder, metaphorical now, rolled through me. Ethan, he stood, pacing to the window, hands in his pockets. I know I'm straight. Or I thought I was. But last night, holding you, it felt right. Scary as hell. But right. The room spun. This was the man who'd high-fived me after my first Pride Parade story. Who'd crashed on my couch after a bad breakup with a woman. Declaring chicks. Man, complicated. Now, here he was, unraveling. I rose, closing the distance, my hand on his arm. You don't have to label it. Just feel it. What followed was tentative, a dance of discovery. His lips met mine softly at first, hesitant, tasting of coffee and courage. I pulled back, searching his face. Are you sure? He nodded, eyes fierce. For once. Yeah. I am. The kiss deepened, hands exploring with a reverence that spoke of years unspoken. Clothes shed in a trail to the bedroom, bodies colliding in a symphony of gasps and whispers. It wasn't frantic, it was revelation, his touch mapping territories he'd never charted. My response is guiding him with whispered encouragements. In the afterglow, tangled in sheets, he traced patterns on my chest. This changes everything, doesn't it? It did. The weeks blurred into a secret rhythm, stolen mornings before his commute, where I'd wake to his lips on my shoulder, evenings where he'd grade papers at the kitchen table while I sketched beside him, our ankles hooked under the wood. But shadows loomed. Ethan's colleagues noticed his distraction, the principal pulling him aside for a chat about focus. Friends texted questions about why he dodged bar nights. And me, the fear of losing him to confusion, to the world's weight on a man rewriting his story. One crisp October evening, as leaves skittered across our stoop, it fractured. Ethan came home late, tie loosened, face stormy. Dinner with Dad, he explained, collapsing onto the couch. He grilled me about settling down, mentioned setting me up with his boss's daughter. My stomach twisted. What did you say? He sighed, rubbing his temples. Dodged it. But Alex, it's eating at me. What if this is a phase? What if I hurt you? The words landed like blows, each one chipping at the fragile bridge we'd built. I knelt before him, taking his hands. Phases end. It's us. Messy, real. But if you're scared, we face it together. Tears welled in his eyes, tears I'd never seen. Not even on that stormy night. I don't want to lose you. Not as a friend. Not as. This. We held each other then, sobs mingling with rain pattering anew outside. It was raw, the kind of breaking that precedes mending. Healing came in layers. Ethan sought a therapist, a quiet woman in Chelsea who specialized in identity. Her office a sanctuary of plants and soft lamps. He shared snippets after sessions, the relief of voicing doubts aloud, the stories of others who'd walked similar paths. I tagged along to a local LGBTQ+ support group one night. Not for me, but for him, sitting in the circle of folding chairs, holding his hand under the table as men shared tales of love defying boxes. See, I whispered later, over greasy diner fries. You're not alone. Winter wrapped Brooklyn in frost. Our apartment a cocoon of twinkle lights and shared scarves. Holidays tested us, Ethan flying home for Christmas. Me tagging along uninvited at first, then welcomed with wary smiles from his dad. Over eggnog by the fire. Ethan came out. Voice steady, Dad. Alex isn't just my roommate. He's my partner. The silence stretched, heavy as the snow outside, until his father clapped a hand on his shoulder. Son, life's too short for hiding. Your mom would have loved him. It wasn't perfect. Awkward questions followed. Assumptions lingered, but it was a crack in the ice. Sunlight piercing through. Spring bloomed with renewal. My designs landed a big client, a queer-owned bookstore chain needing vibrant covers, and Ethan surprised me with a weekend getaway to the Catskills. A cabin where we hiked trails hand in hand. No hiding from passers-by. This is forever, right? He asked one night. Stars wheeling overhead. Our bodies entwined on a blanket. I kissed his forehead. As long as you want it, but drama shadowed even joy. A school board meeting turned ugly when rumors swirled. Whispers of inappropriate conduct from a parent whose kid had caught Ethan on a date with me in the park. The principal called him in, papers shuffling like accusations. Ethan, we value diversity, but optics matter. He came home shaken, badge in hand, contemplating resignation. Rage boiled in me, not at him, but the world that dared clip his wings. Fight it, I urged, pacing our kitchen. Or we leave. Together. He chose fight, with fire I hadn't seen since his classroom passion. Allies emerged, fellow teachers who'd marched in pride, students who'd penned letters praising his inclusivity. The board backed down, issuing a vague, misunderstanding statement. But the victory tasted bittersweet. That night, as we lay spent and sated, Ethan turned to me. You saved me, Alex. From a storm inside, summer heat waves tested our bond further. A road trip across the Midwest to his roots, my uncharted territories, became a crucible. In dusty diners and neon-lit motels, old ghosts rose, his exes texting nostalgia, my insecurities flaring when a gas station clerk leered at him. One night in Nebraska, under a harvest moon, it erupted. Do you regret this? I demanded, voice breaking in the motel hum of AC. Ethan pulled me close. Fierce. Regret? Hell no. You're the best risk I ever took. By fall. 2 years from that stormy ask, we stood on the precipice of more. Ethan proposed tenure-track whispers. I inked a book deal for my illustrations. But the real milestone? A quiet vow exchange in our living room. Rings simple silver bands engraved with coordinates of that thunderous night. No fanfare, just us. Pizza boxes as witnesses, promising to weather every gale. Our friendship evolved, not erased, but elevated, still roommates in spirit, partners in truth. The straight boy who'd sought shelter found home in unexpected arms. And I, the quiet dreamer, discovered love's thunder could reshape souls. In the end, it wasn't about labels or lines crossed. It was about choosing each other, day by stormy day, in a world that sometimes forgot how to love without fear.